Hello and welcome to our 123Insight evaluation workshop demonstration. So what we're looking at today is a bit of a day in the life of a 123Insight user. So I'll just jump to the next slide, but what we're looking at is the demo that we call from engineering through to dispatch and everything in between. So what we're going to look at is how we create our products. So we're going to look at creating a new part with a bill of materials and a routing, and we're going to derive a standard cost for that part. We're going to look at selling our parts. We're going to look at creating a sales order. We're going to acknowledge that sales order by email and look at how that's impacted our financials. We're going to look at the planning to make. So this will be running MRP and looking at those suggested purchase orders and suggested works orders. We'll look at then some real world changes. So we know that the real world changes do happen and customers change their mind, for example. So we'll look at some of that and then how we can exert control over what MRP is suggesting at that time. Then we'll look at progressing some operations. So we'll book the units in from a purchase order. We'll issue some to a works order. We'll book some labour time and we'll book some final finished goods into stock. And then we'll look at dispatching goods out of the door to the customer. So diving straight into the engineering department, we'll go and look to create a really nice and simple basic structure as we've got depicted below. So in this demo, we are manufacturing PCs, so personal computers. What we're going to do is just have four purchase components that go in to make a PC. So a base unit, a mouse, a keyboard, and a hard drive. 123 absolutely handles much higher complexity. We've got customers with thousands of components and sub-assemblies and multiple level bills of materials, but for the purpose of demo we're going to keep it nice and simple. And we'll do the same with the routing. We're going to route it through some assembly time and some inspection time, and from that bill of materials and that routing we're going to generate a standard cost for our PC. So I'll dive straight into 123Insight. Now, today in 123Insight, I'm logged in as Janet. Now, Janet is one of our super users, so Janet has access to everything in the system, but you can absolutely set roles and permissions to restrict what people can and can't see and what people can and can't edit. So just a very high level example, we've got the financials tab up here. It's very likely you won't want everyone in the business to be able to just access that financial information, and that may well just be for the management and senior management teams. I'll just put that bar away there so it gives us a bit more space on screen to work with. So what we'll do is we'll jump into our structures screen. Before we look at our PC, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our lever assembly that we've already got made in 123Insight. So my 566 lever assembly. Now this is again a really nice and simple structure, but what we have is a couple of items that go into making our lever assembly. So we've got some brackets and we've got some hinges. Now I can see straight away that the hinge has got this pink icon next to it, telling us that that is a purchase part, whereas the bracket has got a blue icon telling us that this is a manufactured part. We do have a key here as well, which gives you a breakdown of all of those icons, but you do get used to them pretty quickly in 123Insight. So drilling further into the bracket, we can then see we know this is a manufactured part. So actually, to get us these brackets, what we do is we take some of this 50mm diameter bar and we put this through some milling, some drilling, and some inspection time. We can then send this out to a subcontractor for some treatment and bring it back in for some final inspection. Doing all that will give us our bracket, of which we take two brackets and one of the hinges. Again, put that through some nice and simple operation time, some assembly and some inspection, and that is going to give us our lever assembly. So let's do the same and create that structure for our PC1000. So I'll start typing in PC1000 in here, and what you can see, this hasn't auto-filled, so that tells me straight away that the PC1000 as a part number doesn't yet exist in 123Insight. So I'll press Control and Enter, and that's going to take me over to the Add Edit Part screen, where I can create the part number PC1000 in our system. So I'm going to say that this is a manufactured part, and I'm just going to give this a name there of basic PC. Now that really is the minimum amount of information that you need in 123Insight to create a part number. It may be that you choose to make other fields mandatory as well, certain analysis fields that you need to record against parts, but as standard, this is the minimum amount of information. And it has pulled through a couple of defaults here as well. So unit of measure, it's pulled to our default of each, but again, you can have multiple units of measure set up in the background. We've got things like box and kilos and meters, but you can set them up to what you need. And it's pulled through our default location of stores here. I'm also going to say that this part is a serialized part. So this PC is a serialized part. We've got a couple of different ways of doing that in 123Insight. First off, we've got an externally defined format. Usually this would be used for purchase parts that come in from a supplier, and the supplier is telling us which serial numbers are coming into stock. So at book goods in, we'd need to tell 123. Whereas the other types are internally defined, and effectively that is creating a number sequence for your serial numbers. You can either do that specific to one part or sort of a group of parts. In my example here, I've got a group of parts, desktop PC, and it's going to pick up the next serial number in the sequence, which is DTPC/, then quite a few numbers, but it's going to pick up 56 and then 57 the next time I bring one of those into stock. So let's say that my PC 1000 is going to be in that particular serial number format. So we give that a save, and we'll drop back to the structure screen. So this has now created our part number, but with a blank bill of materials and routing. And from here, I can start adding those things. So let's first off jump into the bill of materials. Here I'm going to say that we've got those four purchase components that we saw. So we've got the base unit. So I can do a search on that in the drop down. I want the keyboard, which in my demo database I've only got a few parts, so nice and easy to find. But what you can do as well, if you didn't know the part number off the top of your head, you knew it was a hard drive that you needed, but you didn't know what the part number was, for example, you can press F3, and that brings up what we call a component search and select grid. And this is where you can search on not just the part number, but actually other attributes for the part itself. So for example, maybe I'm going to type drive into the description filter, and here I'm then just taken to a list of just the parts that have got the word drive in. It may be that you also then want to filter on other elements here as well. So maybe you just want to look at certain product groups or in fact items that we've got stock availability of as well. But for sake of argument for today, I'll choose my HD 1000 there. And the last part that I wanted to add was the MS1000, the wireless mice. Now again, as I type this in, it's not auto-filling, which tells me that this part number MS1000 doesn't actually exist in our system at the moment. So I'll do the same and press Control and Enter exactly as we did with the PC 1000, but this time I'm going to create a purchased part. So my wireless mouse, if I can spell wireless correctly, is now available to us as a part number. But what I'm going to do, because this is a purchase part, is I'm actually going to put some supplier pricing in here as well. So jumping over to the suppliers tab, I'm going to say, well, this is coming from my supplier SR components here. These are going to be my #1 rated suppliers. So these are the people that I would normally expect to buy these mice from. Again, I've only got a couple of different suppliers in my database, but you could have, as many, absolutely as many as you need. And you could press F3 and get a search and select grid here to be able to sort of search on those suppliers. But I'm going to choose my my supplier SR components. They are a supplier that's based in America, so I've set them up as a US dollar supplier. As you can see on that second grid, we can see the cost per each is in US dollars. Because they're an American supplier, if we do purchase them, we do tend to purchase them in bulk. So we do tend to buy them as hundreds. So I'm going to put my minimum quantity as 100. And if they, when the supplier sends them to us, they normally send them in boxes of 25. So I'm going to say we'd like to order them in multiples of 25. So I ever had a case where I needed, let's say, 141 units. MRP is going to suggest that we get 150 as it's over that 100 and then in multiples of 25. Again, they are shipping over from America, so I'm going to say, well, they take 8 days to get to us. And in terms of inspection days, I'm going to give us a couple of days to inspect these units as well. Then in the second grid for SR components here, I can say, well, if I ever did buy them in ones, I don't tend to because I tend to buy them in hundreds, but if I ever did, that's going to cost me $7.85, and that's US dollars, don't forget. If I was then to order 100, which is what I would normally do, let's say we get them for $5.45. And if I ever go mad and buy a boatload and get 1,000, we get a bit further discount, and let's say we get them for $4.90. What we can also do here is set up an alternative supplier. So we could set up an alternative supplier. They're not my number one rated. They're not what we normally go to, but as an alternative, if FLR components haven't got can't provide them for whatever reason, or we need them maybe in a shorter lead time, I'm going to say that we can go to All Metal suppliers who are just down the road. Again, they're set up as a GBP supplier. We tend to only buy them in ones because realistically, we normally buy them from SR Components, and they're a bit more expensive from All Metal suppliers. We only buy them when we're in a bit of a sort of trouble. So I'm going to say, well, lead time is just 1 day, and inspection time is just 1 day as well. So we'll put a quantity price break for All Metal suppliers in here, and we'll say that, well, if we ever buy them from these guys, they do charge a bit of a premium, so it's £11 and 85 pence. So what you'll see with this screen here, and you'll see this across 123Insight, is that we have these sort of context-sensitive grids, where if I click SR components in the top grid here, the second grid amends to what I'm looking at in the top grid. So if I click All Metal suppliers, I see their cost break information, whereas if I click SR components, I'm seeing their cost break information. And as I say, you see that many places across 123. So now that we're happy with our supplier pricing, we'll commit that there. We'll close that down. We're taken back to our bill of materials screen. I'm very happy with that now. I've added my 4 components. I'll just put quantities of 1 for each, but of course 123 can handle multiple quantities and decimal quantities here as well. We can set scrap percentages as well if we needed to. So we'll close that down, and we're taken back to our structure screen where we have our now new bill of materials showing. We also want to create our routing. So let's jump into the routing screen and say, well, this is what we expect the operations would be for creating a PC1000. So I'm going to keep this nice and simple and just have the assembly and inspection time. But you can absolutely create these resources to your exacting requirements. So it may be that you have more steps specific to your own manufacturing. So I'm going to enter some run time here. So I'm just going to say, well, the assembly time takes 45 minutes per unit, and the inspection time takes 15 minutes per unit. You can also set up you can set set time here as well. So if you were needing to turn on a machine before you were able to do that, warm up an oven, for example, you could put some set time in here, and that would be the same set time across different batch sizes. So regardless of whether you're making 1 or 100, that oven is still going to take half an hour to warm up before you can use it. We also have some narratives here as well, so you're able to say, well, actually for this inspection operation, I've got some defaults set up in the background. I've got some that are called first off inspection and final inspection. These narratives will go onto the works order and will be instructions to the guys on the shop floor that are actually doing the work. So for the inspection, I'm going to say, well, final inspection, and please inspect all units. So just a bit of instructions there for the guys doing the work. We can also have attachments here as well. The attachments may well be some kind of technical drawing or work instructions. All of those things will be viewable to those on the shop floor through shop floor data collection. Once we're happy with the routing, we shall come back to the structure screen, and this now shows our full complete structure here, which is our 4 purchase components along with those 2 operations. That can give us a cost now, so we'll come over to the cost update tab. and this is now showing us that we have, I'm just going to make this screen a little bit bigger here. This will now show us that we have a standard cost of just over £110 for our PC1000. So our standard cost is what we anticipate it would cost us to manufacture a PC1000. That is broken down over on the left-hand side here, so we can see that it's pulling component cost. It's also assuming the minimum batch size, so we only need one mouse, but it's assuming that actually we're going to buy in 100, and then it's converted it from the US dollar price to our GBP base currency price here, and it's saying, well, that's going to be just over £4, and then it's done the same for the other three components: £40 for the hard drive, 10 for the keyboard, and 25.50 for the base unit, giving us an overall component cost of just over £80. We've then got some labour cost associated with the labour time. So we've got our assembly here of £22.50. Now, if I dive into the actual resource itself, so with a right click, and again, you'll see this in lots of places across 123, you can right click and sort of jump to another area of the system. So assuming you have the rights, that is, but I'm going to edit the resource. So I'm actually going to go and look at the kind of the setup screen for the resource here, the add edit resources. Now, this assembly resource, we have an hourly run rate in here of £30 an hour. Now, I'm seeing this assembly resource as an assembly line, a group of, and I've got here 5 resources. So that's 5 people working on that assembly line, making those PCs. But it may well be that these resources would be more relevant to be set up as as machines, maybe. So if you've got a bank of CNC machines, for example, you may say, well, actually, this is 5 CNC machines. And we do have a tick box here that allows you to decide whether this resource can be used across, the multiple resources can be used for one works order or not. So in my example, an assembly line, yeah, you can have 5 guys all working at the same time on one works order. But if it was a bank of CNC machines, you probably wouldn't want to split that across multiple resources. You would want one works order to exclusively go through one machine rather than multiple. You can define how many resources you've got. So as I said, we've got five people here working on the assembly line. I'm going to say that they are 80% efficient. We know they do sneak out the back for a chat sometimes, so they're probably not 100% efficient, but they're a good team. So we're looking at 80% efficiency there. They do work 8 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, but Friday they do work a short day. So we're going to say they work 5 hours on a Friday. So as an overall, that gives us the ability to say, well, each resource has got 37 hours available, times that out by 5, and the planned efficiency gives us an available hours for this assembly resource per week of 148. And that's what MRP will be looking at when it looks to plan in these works orders into this assembly resource. We can also set a calendar for the individual resources. So I'm going to say, well, Saturdays and Sundays are non-working days, but we can also block out some time here and say, well, actually, the Christmas break, we know the guys aren't going to be working that week, so let's block that whole week out, and MRP will work around that, and it won't try and book any capacity into that given week. So we'll give that a save, and we'll drop back to our cost update screen. And as we said before, this has now given us £22.50 of assembly time, along with £7.50 from inspection, giving us an overall labour cost of £30. It may well be that you've got some cost associated with any set or subcontract or any of our landed cost elements, which you can set up. However, I haven't for this particular PC, so here I'm seeing my standard cost, which has added the component and the run together to give us just over £110 as our standard cost. I will jump back to the PowerPoint quickly, and we'll just see that we've covered off everything over here on the left-hand side. So we've created that PC1000, we've created it as a new part, and then we've got our bill of materials and our routing, and from there we got a standard cost. What we'll do next is we'll move over to the right hand side of this and we'll look at, well, we want to create a very similar PC2000, a slight change to the hard drive, but we want to create a similar PC. So can we use our PC1000 to copy and create a PC2000? We're going to look at some design change. Now this is looking at our version control in 123Insight. And then we'll look at some make versus buy, which is looking at our method control in 123Insight. So I'll jump back to 123. So as we know, we've got our PC 1000 here, but I want to create a PC 2000 as our, we found our customer demand is saying that, well, actually we could do with a PC with more hard drive storage. So I could just go and do exactly what I did with the PC 1000, create a new part number, add the BOM, add the routing. Not so bad in my example where my BOM and routing are very simple, but in the real world where those BOMs and routings and structures can be really complex, it'd be nice to just actually then copy my PC 1000, creating the PC 2000 on the fly. It's just going to copy across everything in terms of that bill of materials and routing exactly as it is from PC 1000. You are given a few options here as well, so you may choose to copy certain things across, but it may be that, for example, you don't want to copy attachments across because the attachments for the PC 1000 are unique to the PC 1000. You don't want those, and you'll go and manually put some new attachments against your PC 2000. So you have the granularity to here to choose what you would and wouldn't like to copy across. I'm just going to say yes to that. And here we can see we've now got our PC 2000 with an exact carbon copy of our PC 1000 structure, that being bill of materials and routing. Now I am in edit mode here, which means that actually I can just edit from this screen if there's just some small changes that I want to make. So for example, what we're going to do is rather than change into a bigger hard drive, what we're actually going to do for this PC 2000 is just put two of the same hard drives in. So here I can update that bill of materials quantity from 1 to 2. Now that we've got that extra hard drive, it does take them a little bit longer to assemble and inspect. And what I'm going to do is just put an extra note on here and say capitalized, don't forget to check for second hard drive. No, I've spelled that wrong, so let's try that again. So don't forget to check for second hard drive. Again, that note will go down on the works order, so it will be a reminder to the inspection team, and I could do exactly the same in the assembly narrative as well. But that really quickly has allowed us to copy our PC 1000, get an almost exact carbon copy, which we can then sort of make some quick changes to. What we can also do in 123Insight is have our versions. So everything that we've looked at so far for both PCs is our version 1. So that's 0001, and that's our current version. So that's what we're sort of expecting to manufacture to. Any new works orders that are raised today would be raised at that version. But we can create a new version as well. So I'll save those changes first. But we'll create a new version for our PC 2000. So a version 2. Again, it's just going to create an exact copy initially. And actually, when you first come back to this screen, you actually don't see anything different. And that's because we're not viewing our pending versions. So it's kind of in an offline state. So it's pending, so it's not going to affect any current production going through. Any of those open works orders aren't going to be affected. This is an offline state, which means that the engineering team can kind of come in and make some changes to the version 2 before they sort of push that out as live. So here what I'm going to say is, well, actually, let's say we've now been struggling to source the hard drives, the HD 1000. So I'm going to jump into the bill of materials and I'm going to say, well, actually, it's not the HD 1000 that we're using anymore because that's becoming quite difficult to get hold of. But we've got an HD 1020 that is same fit, form and function. Customer isn't going to notice a difference to their PC 2000s, whether they get them at version 1 or version 2. If it was a big enough change, we'd always suggest a new part number so that the fit, form and function of the PC 2000 with a different hard drive should really be a PC 3000, for example. But with this hard drive being similar enough, we're going to say, well, actually, this is still a PC 2000, but it's just a different way for us to manufacture it. It's still in an offline pending state at the moment. So what I can do is I can go into the part itself, and from here I can look at our methods and versions tab, and I can say, well, we've got our version 1, which is current, that's what we're still expecting to use, but we've got our version 2 that's pending. I can set a date effective here, and I'll say, well, okay, maybe this date I want to start using these new the new version of PC 2000 from the 14th of April. We get a quick message to say, well, MRP is going to anticipate that once we go past that date, we'll start using that new demand, and that is true. But what you'll also get on the day that we on that 14th of April in this example, what we'll also get is when somebody with the relevant rights logs in, they will get a message saying, do you want to allow this this part to upversion? What we didn't want to do was not have any sort of human interaction. We didn't want it to just sort of silently happen in the background. So we've got that little nice and quick utility when somebody first runs in that says, well, do you want to allow the upversion of these parts? So we click OK and give that a save. And now we're still working to version 1 at the moment. Engineering team can still go in and make some changes to version 2 without affecting anything. But we are expecting to sort of cut over to the new version as of the middle of April. While we're in this screen, what we can also do is we can also create an alternative purchase type. So as standard, this part, this PC 2000, is a manufactured part, but on occasion, as an alternative, we could purchase this item. So we're buying all the components from one supplier, so it may well be that that supplier is willing to put those units together for us and then send us the complete unit rather than just sending us the components. Because I've now got this purchase method as an alternative, I'm going to jump into the suppliers tab, and I'm going to add here some supplier pricing. So let's say it's again coming from All Metals, pardon me, from SR Components. They are our #1 rated supplier. We don't tend to buy these in any quantities rather than just ones and twos. But again, there's going to be a bit of a lead time on these. So let's say it's going to be 25 days between getting them shipped to us and SR Components actually putting these units together for us. And again, let's give ourselves a couple of inspection days there as well. If we are to buy these from SR Components, they, let's say, charge us 455 US dollars. So a bit of a premium for putting them together, but it is an alternative for us to look at. And now that we've done that, what we can do is we can go into the cost update for the PC 2000 and looking at all methods and all versions, we can actually see here that we can do a bit of a cost comparison across all three of those. So we can see our method, our manufactured method version 1, which is our current, that's what we expect to do. We expect to manufacture it to version 1. That has a standard cost of £158. Our version 2, where we've had to change our hard drive, we're using a slightly different hard drive, is slightly more expensive. So our standard cost there is £161 for a PC 2000. And if we're ever in a situation where we want to purchase it, maybe we haven't got the time and capacity to manufacture it, for example, what we can do is buy them from SR Components, but it is a heavy premium there because we're paying £334 rather than the kind of 158, 161 that we'd be paying if we manufactured these parts instead. So really nice to be able to do those sort of analysis there on your standard cost versus your cost if you were to move over to a different version or a different method. So jumping back to the PowerPoint, we have done everything now over on the right hand side from the engineering team. So we've looked at the cloning a similar PC. We've created our PC 2000 from the bare bones of our PC 1000. We've looked at some design change, that was looking at different versions, and we've looked at make versus buy, which was looking at different methods in 123Insight. So we're going to sort of move on from the engineering team there, and we'll move on to the sales department. So looking at the sales department, what we're going to do is we're going to enter a sales order. So it may well be that we've got the customer on the phone speaking to the sales guys and want to order some PCs. We'll look at acknowledging that sales order by email. So we'll send off a sales acknowledgement, and we will have a look at the financial impact of that new sales order as well. So I'll jump over to 123. I'll close down the structure screen. And what I'm going to do before we look at adding a sales order is what we can do is create a default sales lead time in the background for our PCs. So I'm going to say that, well, on average, we expect that we will be taking 21 days to ship these to a customer, and we'll do exactly the same for our PC 1000 and our PC 2000. We'll say that's 21 days. If we didn't have anything filled in there, when you enter a sales order, it's going to automatically assume that you can essentially provide those straight away. So that's a really important field to give you a date in your sales order straight away. But from the sales order, we can then actually start looking at, well, do we have any units that we can ship straight away? And do we have any components that if we needed to manufacture it? So let's get straight into that. And let's say that we've got a customer, General Engineering, Jim from General Engineering on the phone wanting to buy some of these PCs. So we will create a new sales order here, and again I'm going to just choose my my customer, General Engineering. I've only got a couple of customers, but again you could use your F3 to bring up a search and select grid and find the exact customer that you need. And here has now pulled through the defaults for my my customer, General Engineering. So they are a GBP customer, so they're set up as sterling in the background. It's pulled through their default invoice and delivery address. Both are amendable from here if they were asking, for example, these to be shipped to a different delivery address to usual. It's pulled through our default contact for General Engineering as well as Janet as the logged in user for our contact. Moving over to the details tab, I'm going to add the lines here. So let's say that we're going to add our PC 1000, and Jim is asking for 10 of those units. What we can do in 123Insight in terms of unit price, we've got lots of different ways of deriving a unit price. We can use the what we call product specific price lists. We can set up customer specific price lists. We can have a discount matrix so that if you're selling a particular type of product to a particular type of customer, they get an X percentage discount, whereas if you're selling to a different, maybe you're selling to an end user rather than a distributor, they'll get a different level of discount. We can also, from creating a quote, we can uplift certain elements of the finished goods. So maybe you want to uplift your labor by, let's say, 50%, but the components you only want to uplift by 20%, and that can generate a sell price for you. What we also have is a minimum margin set up in the background. So we'll say from here, we'll say, well, actually, this is, I'm anticipating that we're going to want with any sales order to make a 25% margin as an absolute minimum. And because we're not meeting that at the moment, this line is highlighted in red. I haven't set up for this new part that we've just created. I haven't set up the any of those price lists, so I'm just going to manually enter a new price in here, a selling price of £1,000 for these PCs, and now that line has changed from red, and we can see we're far exceeding our minimum margin that we've set up. Let's also then pull through our PC 2000 as our line 2, and again I'm going to do another 10 of those units. And those, let's say, we'll agree with the customer that we're going to sell those for £1,500. Now, what I mentioned about all those different price lists and ways of generating a price, over on the right hand side we have a column here that's called price source. So this is really useful for a sales user to be able to say where that price came from, especially if you know, we're 2-3 weeks or months down the line and manager says to them, well, where did that price come from? Where did that £1,000 come from? If that was a product specific or a customer specific price list, for example, that would show in here. Unfortunately, if it shows manual as it does in my example, it wouldn't have anything to fall back on other than that I've manually typed that price in. So now let's look at the delivery date. Well, it's picked up that 21 days from today's date for these items because I've said that's our kind of default sales delivery date. That's how long we usually anticipate it will take us to supply these PCs to a supplier, to a customer. But we have this information down in the bottom left as well that can really then let us sort of drill into when we can or couldn't provide these items. So the first one to show you is the show part information. Now this is really useful because this is going to give you that kind of headline overview of where you're at with this part. So looking at my PC 2000, I can see that I've got none on hand, none due in fact none due out, and a final balance of 0. So well, unfortunately, Mr. Customer, I haven't got any that I can ship you right now, and knowing that we haven't got any due in or due out, I can see my expected future movements down here. This isn't giving us any indication that we've got any coming into stock anytime soon. So I'm not going to be able to ship them to you, but what I can do is look at the trial kit, and this is going to show us then the components and the availability of the components, because it may be that you've already got all the components in stock and we just need to assemble them and we can ship them off. However, I'm taken back to the structure screen looking at my trial kit here, and I can see straight away that unfortunately I haven't got any of these available either. We require 10 of the base units, keyboards and mice, and 20 of the hard drives. We're looking at the PC 2000, and we are short of all of those. We haven't got any of these components to then make any of these, so we are going to need to buy these in from the supplier. We are then going to need to manufacture these, and in fact from here we could even dive into each of the individual components or sub-assemblies if there were any, and actually go and start doing a bit of further analysis. So my suppliers tab here, I can see that, well, actually, if I buy them from SR Components, these mice, it's going to take me 8 days of lead time, and in fact we've also got a couple of days of inspection there as well. The last thing that we can look at from the sales order as well is our capacity check. So this is saying, well, have I got the availability to manufacture these items at the moment? Well, actually, at the moment, I haven't got anything planned into any of these weeks. So week of 3rd of Feb, 10th of Feb, 17th of Feb, I haven't got any jobs planned in this time. So I've got plenty of capacity to actually work on these PC 1000s and 2000s. So capacity isn't a problem, but we are going to have to get these components bought in, manufactured, and then we can ship them off to the customer. So I think my estimate there of 21 days is pretty reasonable, but of course you can absolutely go and amend that at this stage and choose to have a delivery date agreed with the customer a bit further out, maybe, for example. You can also record a what we call a memo field here, and we've called this one the customer required date. This can be this field can be called anything that you want it to be, but this we've called the customer required date, and really what we mean by that is the original customer required date. So we've agreed with the customer that we're going to ship them to them on the 18th of February. And at least if there's then any changes, we have that original date recorded. So the original agreement date was the 18th of February. Even if later on down the line you may choose to change the actual delivery date to the customer, that can then stay fixed. Means you can do a bit of analysis after the fact on the kind of OTIF to the customers if you wish. So right, I'm very happy with my sales order now. I've got everything that I need, so we'll give that a close and let's go and look at that sales acknowledgement. So my sales acknowledgement here, I'll have just this one unprinted and waiting ready to go. I can just do a print preview on this just to check that I've put all of the correct information, or I can do an email PDF and get this to attached to an email to the customer. So if I hit print down here, what this will do is this will then probably open up Outlook on my other screen, as it often tends to. But while that's opening up, if fact, I'll drag that over now. This has now created a sales order from a sales acknowledgement, I should say, from me to Jim at GenEng with the attachment in place as well. So if I give that an open up, we can have a look at our standard report format here. And again, it has opened up on my other screen, so let me bring that over. But this is our standard report format. Now, all of the reports in 123 are completely amendable by yourself. So we do have a couple of report designers inside of 123 that you can navigate to. And from there, you can make any really simple changes. Like it might be that you just want to change the blue here or some of the colors. Really easy to do those sorts of things. Really easy to just kind of move fields around, add new fields, delete or hide other fields. So really nice and easy to do that. But you can also, and some of our customers have, completely bespoke to these reports. Any of these reports that you see in 123Insight, completely bespoke to your own particular requirements. But hopefully everything that you'll see on the sales acknowledgement itself will be kind of what you would expect to see. So we can see the customer information. We've got the lines, so line 1 and 2 of the PCs. We've got the quantities and the unit prices and the overall overall order total. So let me close that down. I will close down the email here as well and make sure that I don't actually send that off to Jim at GenEng. So we'll give that a close and we'll dive back to our PowerPoint here. So what we've done is we've entered the sales order and we've acknowledged by emails. So let's go and have a quick look at how that has affected our financial position. So jumping into my financials tab, where again we'll have a bit of an sort of an overview initially, where we can see my sales order book is now sat at £25,000. So I can right click, and again these right clicks really do take you to lots of places in 123, but right click and I can look at the grid view of our sales order book. So the grid view here is just going to give us the sort of the headline information, so we can see the sales order and line. We can see the customer information. We can then scroll along and see the quantity that was ordered, delivered, and outstanding, part number and due dates, and then the financial information at the end, unit price and line total outstanding. But actually what's really useful to be able to do from any of these grids that you see in 123Insight is be able to export that into Excel. So if I were to export that to Excel, it's going to open up an Excel document here with all of that same information that we were just looking at, but of course it's now in Excel. So if you were in need of being able to create any information on the back of this spreadsheet or any manipulation that you need to do, you can do all of that in Excel. Again, I'll make sure that I don't save that. So jumping over to the PowerPoint, we've now done everything from a sales department. So we have now entered that sales order, we've acknowledged it by emails, and we've had a look at how that's affected our financial position. So from there, we'll move on. And let's look at the planning department. So from here, this is where we're going to run MRP, and that is where we're going to see those suggested purchase orders, suggested works orders, where MRP is trying to balance the demand that we've generated with new purchase orders and works orders to bring in those stocks, those units into stock to be able to ship off to the customer. I'll dive back into 123 and we'll look at the planning window now. And from the planning window is where we're going to run MRP. So this little cog down here at the bottom, this is where we run MRP. In my demo database with not much data, very little demand, it'll take a few seconds to run MRP. Even some of our bigger customers, we'd still see them running MRP in a few minutes up to sort of maybe 10 minutes as a maximum. Now that MRP has run, we can see what MRP has suggested. Now, for those of you that maybe don't know, but MRP is always trying to balance the demand that's been generated in 123Insight with, as I say, bringing units into stock. Now, that demand may be in the form of sales orders, like we've got today with our sales order to general engineering, but it could also be in the form of forecasts or for minimum stocks, for example. So it's going to look at that as an overall. It's going to look at all of the demand that's generated, and then it's going to say, okay, well, you need to be able to fulfill that demand in time. You need to have these works orders and these purchase orders. So let's look at the works orders that it's suggesting. So the first thing it's saying is, well, you're going to need some works orders for some PC 1000s and 2000s. Now, looking at the start on and required date, that is just before the ship to date to the customer. So we had the 18th of February, and it's saying, well, actually, you require to require these, and you need to start working on these on the 17th of February. So this is a really important point, as 123Insight works to a just-in-time basis. So 123 is always going to look at this and say, well, this is kind of the last moment that you can start working on these to ensure that you can fulfill that demand. It'll do that from a manufacturing works order perspective. It'll also do it from a purchasing perspective as well, as we'll see in a second. So we can see we've got those two lines being suggested, and if we scroll over to the right hand side, we can see the sales order that's being suggested for. And it may be that you want to just go ahead and enact those straight away and say, yes, I'm very happy with those works orders. But it might be that you want to do a little bit of investigation and say, well, actually, if I look at my potential loading screen, this is going to show me my current capacity and what the capacity will look like once MRP has sort of, if we were to enact all of those suggestions, what will our capacity look like? So taking this as an example, the week beginning the 17th of February, we've got a 0% over here, which tells us that we're currently 0% loaded. So we haven't got any work scheduled for that particular week. If we were to add what MRP is suggesting, it would be an additional 13% of my capacity, giving us an overall total of 13%. We can also view that as hours as well, and we can drill that down into the individual resources. So we can see that at the moment, and the week beginning the 17th of Feb, we've got 0 hours planned. If we do what MRP is suggesting, we'll have an additional 17 hours, giving us a total of 17. I like to see it as a percentage, so we know sort of how much percentage-wise we've got available to us. So we know we're only going to be 13% loaded there, still leaving us with plenty of capacity so that we can add more jobs in there. When I click on that individual cell there as well, that then populates into this grid all of the jobs that are relevant here. So in that particular week, we're looking at the assembly and inspection for the PC 1000, and the same for the PC 2000, the assembly and the inspection. So I've got loads of capacity, so I'm very happy to do those that week. It may be that actually when you were looking at that potential loading, you think, well, actually I'm probably going over capacity in that week. MRP is telling me that if we were to do that, we'd be going up to 110, 120% loaded. 123Insight does use infinite capacity, so it will let you do that. Maybe you put some overtime on and you still get that done that week. Or maybe you want to change the date of that works order and you say, well, actually, I'd prefer to get these PC 2000s done sooner. So I can actually just overwrite that there and say, well, actually, I'd like to do that works order on the 10th of February rather than the 17th. In my example, I won't worry too much as they're all there's plenty of capacity to get those works orders done in that given week. So at that point, I'm going to enact those works orders and say, yep, I'm very happy to go and create those works orders. Then on the back of that, we have our purchasing suggestions as well. So here we can look at our new purchase orders to place. And we can see we've got those 4 purchase components that relate to our PCs. Now, over on the right-hand side, we have the quantity here. And it may well be that actually the quantity is something that I'd really actually like to see a bit closer to my my part number. So I'm just going to drag and drop that field over here, and what that will do is that will remember where my my fields want to be for my individual login. So if another person came in and logged in and they want to see their sort of grids set up in a slightly different way, that's no problem. They can drag and drop and set them up exactly as they want them, and that's not going to affect my login or vice versa. So here we can see that the MRP is suggesting we get 20 of the keyboards and 20 of the base units, which I'm sure makes sense. It's suggesting 30 of the hard drives, and of course we need two for each PC 2000 and one for each PC 1000. So again, that makes sense. And lastly, it is suggesting that 100 units for the MS 1000, the mice. And of course, that's because we set up that minimum order quantity in the background. So we only actually require 20, but MRP is saying, well, actually, we should order these as hundreds, as that's what we normally do. It is suggesting that we order these from SR Components, as that's our #1 rated supplier. Again, it may be that we want to sort of overrule that and say, well, actually, no, in this situation, I'd prefer to order them from All Metal suppliers. They are my #2 rated, and actually they're quite a lot more expensive, but I will get them much sooner. We have our order by and required on dates here as well. Again, 123 is going to work to a just-in-time basis. So this is really the sort of the last day that we need to order these by to ensure that we can fulfill the demand to the customer or the forecast on the scheduled time. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to wait until that day to order them. So I'm going to go ahead and order these, even though actually we don't really need to order these until early February. I'm going to go ahead and order them straight away. So what we can do from here, we know that we've got that 20 sort of excess mice that we don't necessarily actually need. They are going to be sat on the shelf. We can look at our projection tab. Now, if I look at the mice here and I scroll along, this is showing us that, as we know, we've going to have 80 units as an excess. Well, actually, that value of that excess is only £320. So I'm not too concerned about having £320 worth of these mice on the shelf. I know I will use them in time. They haven't got expiry dates, for example. So I'm absolutely happy to have that. But if that value of the excess was 32,000 or more, it might be a bit of a sharp intake of breath moment to think, well, actually, I don't necessarily want those sat on my shelf. I don't want that value tied up on my shelf. If that were the case, maybe I would come in here and just amend this quantity and order a different amount. So maybe in this scenario, I'd just say, well, actually, I'm just going to order maybe 30, the 20 that I need with a 10 excess. As I say, the value of these mice is fairly small, so I'm not too concerned. So now that I'm happy that we're ordering these from SR Components, in fact, you can also, if you wanted to, I haven't mentioned this bit yet, but right click, and there's lots of information in here, but one of the things is, where has this demand come from? So these wireless mice, why are we ordering them? Where has this demand come from? And actually we can see, well, these are coming from these works orders. These have now been raised, and we've got the works order 5000 and 5001. That's why we need them. And actually, I can drill further into that and see that, well, that's because the PC 1000 is required for this customer, General Engineering, on this particular sales order. So as a nice sort of sanity check, it's often nice to just look where the demand has come from, particularly if it's a high value item that you're thinking, well, why do we need this? Another sanity check here as well is I've highlighted all of these lines. I'm pretty happy to proceed, but we do have the ability to just look at the total cost of the enacted or the purchase orders that we're about to create. So that's coming up at 2,300-ish pounds. That's a nice sanity check. I think as a purchasing manager, you've usually got a gut feel for how much ordering these things is going to be. 2,500 sounds about right. Sounds about the right sort of ballpark for my PC components. If that was coming up at 25,000, again, it might be a sort of, hang on a minute, what's happening? Are we ordering something that we don't need? Have we got a load of excess? Is there an inaccurate price in there somewhere as well? So a nice sanity check there. But actually, I'm happy to proceed. So I'm going to enact those new purchase orders. And now that we've got those works orders created, those purchase orders created, we can go and look at them in our document screen. And we can say, well, let's start with the purchase order. I'm just going to do a print preview this time, but you can absolutely do the same as we did with the sales acknowledgement and get that straight onto an email that can be sent to the supplier. What we're looking at here is our new report designer format. So what we were looking at before with the sales acknowledgement, that will be moved over to our new report designer. But at the moment, we've got our purchase order as the new style in our Dev Express report designer. Absolutely everything I said before is still holds true, that you can go in and you can amend these reports exactly as you need to. So here we can see that we've got the supplier information, we've got the line information, the due on dates. We do also have for the keyboard here, I've just highlighted it, that we have a supplier part number. So we can record that in 123. It may be that the supplier wouldn't recognize your part numbers, but their part number there is recorded against the line. And then we can see, of course, the quantities and the unit cost and total cost, exactly as you'd expect. Again, all the reports can be amended as you need them to be. So let's do the same with our works order now. So we should have a couple of works orders here, because we've got a works order for a PC 1000 and a works order for a PC 2000. Let's go and have a look at our PC 1000, and let's do, again, we'll just do a print preview. You can just do a direct print as well, which goes straight out to a printer. And here we're seeing our works order that gives us our part that we're working on, along with the quantity and the link back to the customer and the sales reference if there is one. We've got our start on and our due dates. If you remember, we selected that these PCs were going to be serialized, so it's grabbed the next serial numbers in that sequence that we chose. And then we can see our operations with those narratives, the sort of the instructions for the guys on the shop floor to follow, along with the 4 different components that require. We do also have a QR code on our works orders, and this can be scanned from our 123 mobile tablet application, and you can actually go and issue those components from the tablet amongst a few other transactions. Right, so I'll close that down, and what we'll do is we'll jump back to the PowerPoint. So we've run MRP, we've got those suggested works orders and those suggested purchase orders. We've done our sort of due diligence, we've done that bit of validity check-in, and we're happy with where they are. We've enacted them, we've created them in the background, and they're now ready to go. So let's move on to the next step. And the next step here is the real world changes. Now, in our example, we're going to say, well, the customer changes their mind. We hope it doesn't happen too often. But what we'll do is we'll look at editing the sales order. We'll look at re-acknowledging. We'll look at how that's impacted the financial situation, and then we'll look at what MRP is going to suggest in terms of rescheduling and cancelling, but we'll also look at the control that we can have over MRP in that situation as well. So let's jump over to 123, and from here, this is where we can go and look to edit a sales order. Now, let's say in this situation, we've raised this sales order with the customer. They've received the acknowledgement, and actually they're phoning up and saying, well, actually, no, we've made a mistake. We want to cancel the PC 2000s. They're more expensive than we were anticipating. We misunderstood. We'd like to cancel them, please. So we can jump into the sales order inquiry as a salesperson while we've got the customer on the phone, and we can give them a bit of a sort of an overview as to where we're at the moment with our PC 2000s, with the manufacturing and sale of our PC 2000s. So I'll click the line here, and we can see, well, straight away we're in the sales inquiry, and we can see that, well, we haven't dispatched them. There's no dispatch note information here, and we haven't invoiced them. So we haven't got as far as that yet, but let's work our way through these tabs to sort of get a bit of an overview of where we're up to. So I can click on the work inquiry, and I can see here that there is a works order raised, but nothing's been issued. The works order itself is in a status of proposed, and in fact, if I scroll over to here, I can see percentage complete is 0. So we've raised a works order for manufacturing these PC 2000s, but we haven't done anything yet. So we'll move over to the next tab, which is our purchase inquiry. And okay, well, for the customer, this might not be the best news, because I'm I have committed to my supplier to purchase these already. So, Mr. Customer, I don't really want you to cancel. So maybe there's a bit of negotiation, and maybe we agree with the customer that we'll deliver them to them in another month's time. So a bit of a less of an impact on their cash flow straight away. But we'll also give them a bit of a discount as well. So we'll drop the price a bit for them. So now that I've got all that information at my fingertips from the sales order inquiry, let's go and look at the add edit sales order from here. So if I were to grab my existing sales order and go into the details tab, here I'm going to say, well, actually, it's the PC2000s that Jim, General Engineering, has got a bit of a problem with, but we've agreed with him that he'll still take them, but maybe he'll take them sort of towards the end of March. And what we could say is, okay, let's give him a bit of an improved price there, because we know he's a bit upset and we'd like to keep him happy as one of our best customers. So let's drop that to 1400. Now, it may well be that you wanted to use that as a discount percentage as well. I've just taken the sort of the other option of updating the unit price, but we can give that a save, and from here we can then go and look at our reprint of our sales acknowledgement. So we'll look at our sales acknowledgement 1500. And what we can see is those changes have taken effect. So we've got a pushed out delivery date there of the 28th of March, and we've got that new unit price of 1400. So again, can ship that, sorry, not ship that, we can send that straight off to the customer. But let's have a look at how that's impacted our financial position. So from here, we've got our sales order book. That was 25,000. That's now dropped to 24,000. We do also now have a purchase order book as well, which is that 2,300 in GBP. But looking at my sales order book, I can look at break this down by month due out, and we'll get a little grid here that shows us, well, actually in February we're expecting to ship out £10,000 worth of my open order book, and in March 14,000. It's a nice quick way of being able to sort of break that sales order book down. And of course, as we did before, it may be that you want to get that out into a grid view and then potentially get that out into Excel as well. So now that we've made those changes to the demand in 123, we will see some changes from MRP. So let's have a look at that. So I've run MRP again, and now we need to look at the existing works orders to reschedule. So this is saying to us, and when we talk about a reschedule in 123Insight, it may be that we're talking about a date change, or it may be that we're talking about a quantity change. Both of them are considered to be reschedules, and in some situations you might get a reschedule that is a quantity and a date change. But in my situation here, my PC2000s, I still need the same quantity, it's just a date change. So we can see here the date has changed by 38 days, the quantity has stayed the same. We then show our original required and start on date, that being the sort of mid-Feb there, 17th of Feb. But now, because we're working to a just-in-time basis, we don't need to start those until towards the end of March, 27th of March. So again, we could just go ahead and enact that. I will look at the potential loading first and see that, well, actually, we can see in the week of the 17th, we were 13% loaded as an overall, and moving that PC2000, we're going to take 7% out, and we're actually moving that 7% straight across to the week commencing the 24th. As I say, I've got loads of capacity here, so I don't really sort of need to worry one way or the other as to whether I'm manufacturing them in the 17th of Feb or the 24th of March. But it might be more sensible, because I have capacity now, to actually just keep them as they were. So let's just have a quick look at the purchasing before we sort of make any decisions, go any further. But initially, we're going to look at the existing purchase orders to reschedule. So this is now suggesting to us, well, for the base units, the hard drives and the keyboards, actually, what we want to do is do a quantity change. So we're going to get rid of, off that original purchase order, at least what MRP is suggesting, is get rid of 10, 20 and 10 of the keyboards, hard drives and base units. There's no changes suggested to the mice, to the MS1000, and of course, because we are ordering that minimum order quantity of 100, we still need some in for February for the PC1000. So we're going to order those full 100 in, and then we'll have stock availability for the PC2000s, even if we're not going to manufacture them till March. So again, we can absolutely make those changes. The works order is the purchase order is already printed, so it's just giving you a bit of a acknowledgement there that that has already been sent to the supplier. So are they going to be happy with those changes? Are they going to kind of allow you to make those changes? What will also be suggested is new purchase orders to cover the what we've just dropped off of that purchase order. So here we can see that we're ordering now, or being suggested, another 10, 20, and 10 of the base units, keyboards, and hard drives. But as I say, it may be that you come back and you think about your production. You think, actually, I've got capacity now in February when I'm going to manufacture these to just get on and get these done as per really the original MRP plan. So rather than enacting this, I could come in and right click and choose to exclude this suggestion. And really, when we exclude something, we're saying that we have acknowledged it, we understand why this is moved, but actually, what we want to do is ignore that suggestion, effectively reverting back to our original plan and saying, well, actually, I want to create those PC2000s in February. So now that I've enacted that, or now that I've excluded that, I should say, I can look back at my production actions, and that suggestion is still going to be there, but it's going to show as excluded, to show that somebody's kind of manually come in and acknowledged that and says no, we want to put that back to when it was. And the purchasing suggestions have all disappeared. Now, of course, what we're doing is revert with that exclusion of the works order is we are the works order suggestion, I should say. We are reverting back to our original plan. So that original plan where we were bringing all those units in for the end of February, we're now back to that. So we don't have anything to change in terms of purchasing suggestions. So 123 really gives you the capability and the ability to actually affect how MRP is going to react. And when it does give you a suggestion, you're very much in control to be able to overrule that and say, well, actually, I'd prefer to do that in a slightly different way. I can change those dates, and I can see from the potential loading when I have capacity to be able to actually manufacture those units. So let's jump back to the PowerPoint here. So this is sort of covered through that real world changes. So we've edited the sales order per Jim's discussion. We've then sent a new acknowledgement over to him. We've seen how that's impacted the financial position, and then we've looked at rescheduling and cancelling an MRP. And more than that, we've seen how we can still exert control in that situation and actually say, well, no, I actually want to do this in a very particular way. So from there, we're going to then go on and look at the production department. So really, this is all about then actually sort of chasing through those purchase orders and works orders as to what we should start. It's looking a bit of our capacity. It's then progressing through the actual works order itself. So really, before that, we're going to book some units into stock from the purchase order. We're going to issue those components to a works order. We're then going to book some labour time. Once we've got the unit into stock, we can then dispatch that off to the customer. So I'll jump back into 123. So the first thing we're going to look at is the progress tab here, which is going to give us a bit of information about our supply chain. So I can then drill into what purchase orders are due in. And from here, we've broken this down into sort of time buckets. So anything that's really badly overdue will fall into this bucket. Anything that's only overdue a little bit will just fall into this bucket. Then looking at today, and then looking forward as well. So looking what's due the rest of the week, the month, or the following month. My 4 components are actually not due until next month, but I can then see them very quickly here and see the purchase order numbers that they're raised on and the due dates. I can go further than that as well, and I can actually go and amend this purchase order. So maybe as a production, pardon me, as a purchasing manager, I'm going to come in and say, well, I know we've had problems in the past with these keyboards, so I've phoned the supplier and I've made sure that they are sending the correct keyboards. So made sure, let's correct that a little bit. Made sure they are sending the correct keyboards. So a quick note there just to say that we've chased the supplier, we're on schedule, and we've made sure that they are sending the correct units. Now those notes become indelible. Somebody else couldn't come in and just sort of change what my note is that I've put here. And you can just keep adding more notes as well. So if Janet chased again in another few days and said, yeah, they're still on schedule, she could add those notes here. But the nice thing is they'll be viewable, those notes, to other people in the business as well. So really, when we were looking at this was from the perspective of a purchasing manager who'd come in and double check on what's due in, and maybe they'd sort of go and amend those purchase orders. But actually, you can also see the sort of the same information from the production perspective. So maybe a production manager is going to come in and look at, well, I need to look at what work to start. So we've broken that down into what work orders should I start, and then what can I and can't I start. So if I look at, let's go into what works orders can't I start. We know we can't start our works order at the moment because we haven't got any of those components in. So I'm going to look in the bucket of following month, and I can see that I've got my 2 works orders, and there is a tiny little red dot there, which you can see, which that actually tells me there's a component shortage. So let's dive into the PC1000 and see, well, actually, okay, or the works order for the PC1000 and say, well, okay, we've got these 4 components. Well, actually, all 4 of them we're short of. But if I drill into them even further, and look, and I can see, well, actually the future movements for these components, or specifically this base unit, shows me that the purchase order has been raised, and we are expecting that the delivery date is on time, and then we'll be needing them for those two works orders. But actually, if I were to go and inquire on this purchase order, now might be there's a production manager, you don't have the rights and the role permissions to go and amend this purchase order, but I can go and look at this purchase order, go and inquire, and again I can see they're all ordered. I've got the dates that they're ordered and delivered, that we expect the delivery to be, and I can then look at the internal notes here and see that Janet has chased that up. So we know we've had problems with those keyboards in the past, but the production manager's confident that that Janet has been, as the purchase manager, has been chasing that in and making sure that the supplier does the right thing there. So really quickly, we can see, well, what purchase orders should I be chasing? And then that allows you to see, well, actually, what works orders should I be starting as well? We can also then see our loading from this screen as well. Now, everything that we've looked at from a loading perspective so far has been the potential loading screen, where we see, well, if MRP were to make those suggestions, what would the impact be? This is now looking at our actual loading. So if I just make that bigger again, this is showing what our actual position is currently. So we can see that my factory is currently in the week of the 17th of Feb 13% loaded, and maybe I want to drill into my individual operations here and say, well, actually my assembly, that is 12% loaded in that week, and down here I can see what those jobs are, and in fact actually I could right click here and get a work to list for that particular resource and say, well, yeah, looking at this particular week, which is the week of that, the 17th of Feb, we have a couple of jobs planned in here, which is a PC 1000s and 2000s. So we've got 16 and 3/4 or 2/3, 16 and 2/3 hours planned. We could go up to 148 hours, so we still have a 131 spare. So nice to be able to print this work to list off to potentially give to the sort of the supervisor of the assembly line and say, well, look, here's the jobs that we're expecting you to get done this particular week. So now that I've looked at my capacity, let's actually start progressing some of these through. So the first thing we need to do is book some goods in. So this is the supplier has sent those 4 components to us. Arrived at the back door, and we want to now book these in. So I'm going to choose my supplier from this list. This has just given me a shortened list of suppliers that have got open purchase orders at the moment. And we do need to enter a supplier delivery note number. You can see that box is highlighted in red, telling us it's a mandatory field. So we have to have a delivery reference in there. So I'll say SRC 00001. And we can choose our purchase order. So purchase order 4003. Again, I'm just going to make this screen a bit bigger. And we've now populated into this grid the 4 lines that are currently on that purchase order. Now, I'm in a situation where I'd like to just book all of these lines in and the full quantities. However, you can amend these quantities here. So it might be that actually you were expecting 100 wireless mice, but they've only sent you 90. And that's then going to assume that that purchase order line is going to stay open. It can go the other way as well. They may have accidentally sent you 101. So it's then gives you a message saying, well, look, you were expecting 100, but you're receiving 101. Are you sure? As I say, from my perspective, I'm just going to book all of these lines in with their full quantities. What you can see in the second grid is the batch information. So batch traceability in 123Insight is really strong, and you can really have very, very strong batch traceability that lots of our customers rely really heavily on. So we can see my keyboards are going to go into a unique batch, that unique batch reference is BN/8009, whereas my base units are going into 8011. Looking at the wireless mice, they're going into 8012, but actually what's arrived from the supplier is 4 different boxes of these, and actually I'd like to put them into 4 different batches in 123Insight. So here, rather than just putting it into that one batch, all 100 units, I'm going to say, well, actually I would like 4 batches of quantity 25. Now I've got 4 unique batch numbers. You can also have fields here that are what we call batch user analysis fields. So this might be where you record information that's specific to you guys. So it might be something like a supplier batch number. So if the supplier has given you that information and has supplied it as 4 different batches, we've got our batch numbers here, 8012 through 8015, but over on the right hand side, if you add those fields, we can record that information as well. We can decide what locations these units are going into, and we can push them through inspection as well if we wanted to. So I'm going to say, well, yeah, we have now going to book those units in. We've got our 4 different batches, and in an ideal world, from a FIFO perspective, we would use our batch 8012 first, and then through to 8015. So I'm very happy with all that. So we'll give that a save. Those units have now been booked into stock, and we can go and actually start using those units. So let's go and issue some components to works orders. So we know that we need to start working on the works order 5000 for our PC 1000. We looked at that as part of the which works orders can I and can't I start. Again, just going to make that bigger. Here we've got our 4 components that need to be issued. We have on-hand quantity. Now, on-hand quantity means whatever we have in the warehouse, whereas the ATI is relating to your individual login. So Janet has access to all of the locations, but it might be that whoever's logged in only has access to a location that they're physically in. So maybe a main stores location, and they don't have access to an off-site location. The ATI, which stands for available to issue, that is going to work on that individual's location rating. So Janet logs in and she can see, well, yeah, I've got my ATI is the full amount. But another user might log in and see a different number. So always good to remember that that is relating to the individual user, and you can really put some controls in place and not allow someone to be issuing from a location they're not physically in. But again, I'm very happy to go and issue the full quantities here. Same as booking in from a supplier, you know, we can choose to only do some of these or partials, or we can over issue if needs be as well. But what I was gonna point out is that here we are looking at the 4 batches available to us of the wireless mice. We've got the 8012 through 15. It is going to work on a FIFO basis to start with. It's going to assume that you would take that on a FIFO basis, but again, you're in control here. So I am looking at my mice and I'm saying, well, actually, when these were booked into stock, someone put batch 8012 right at the back of the warehouse, right at the top of the racking. I'm not going to be able to access that because they've left 8015 available to us. So I'm going to say, well, actually, I'm not issuing from batch 8012. I'm actually issuing from 8015. So let's issue 10 units from there instead. And now, as soon as we've got that, we can go ahead and issue those units. So let's do that. Click there to issue and close down. Right. What we have in 123Insight, and I'm not going to go into it in detail at the moment, is but we do have what we call shop floor data collection, and this is the ability to kind of scan an ID card to tell the system that you're sort of clocked in for the day, and then you can book on to individual jobs and record live labour time. As I say, I'm not going to worry about that from the perspective of this demo, but let's just book some labour time against these works orders by going into enter manual timesheets. So I'm going to say that Janet has been working on works order 5000. She's been working on operation number 10, which is the assembly. She hasn't done all 10 units. She's only worked on 3. And maybe let's say that she's worked for 127 minutes. She's also done the same for operation 20, which is the inspection operation. Again, she's done 3 and she's done, let's say, 47 minutes. So we're now in a situation where she's worked on all 3. I say all 3. She's worked on 3 of the 10, and she's got 3 through all of the operations and ready to book into stock. So let's go for booking 3 of those units in. So receive finished works order into stock screen. This allows us to book in some of these units. We've now got again, we've got Jim from General Engineering on the phone asking, can we ship some of these as soon as possible? We'd really want some of these PCs now. So what we're going to do is we're going to book 3 of these units into stock. In exactly the same way as we saw with booking in those mice and the other components, these are going to go into their own unique batch. So here, a batch number 8016 is created. And when I save this, this is then going to ask me, well, what serial numbers are being booked into stock? We know those 10 serial numbers are associated with that works order, but 123 won't know which 3 of the 10 Janet has worked on. So we've got our drop down here to say, well, Janet has worked on serial numbers 61, 62, and let's say 64. So we've got those 3 serial numbers in stock, and we're still expecting the rest of those 7 serial numbers to be booked into stock when we have finished working on them. Now that we've got them, and as I say, we've got Jim on the phone desperately asking for these to be shipped, we can go and create a dispatch note. So here we're going to create our dispatch note, and we'll choose our customer. Again, similar to booking goods in, this is only showing us the customers here with open sales orders. And what we have is I've set up a pop-up text in the background that you can set up in lots of places, different places around the system, but this is sort of particular to this customer. So when we create a dispatch note for General Engineering, we get this message that says use TNT overnight and apply type 24 labels. So, okay, I'm happy with that. We know that we're going to use TNT. We can also then, when we're creating this dispatch note, we can say how many boxes, pallets, all the dimensions, all the packing weight, any tracking number. We can record all of that information here. But I'm going to jump straight over to the dispatch items, and I'm going to say, well, actually, I would like to dispatch my sales order 1500. Now, straight away, that's populated both lines, and actually, I haven't got any of the PC2000s to ship yet. They're not ready, haven't even started working on them. So I'm going to say, well, no, I don't want to ship any of them at the moment on this particular dispatch note. My ATI, which again references the individual user, but my available to issue, I've got 3 units available to me, and they are all coming out of batch 8016. Because I am shipping the 3 units that we have, 123 is going to know those 3 serial numbers. It's going to say, well, it has to be that 61, 62, and 64 that we chose. If I was only shipping 1 or 2 of those, it would ask me, because I'm not shipping the whole batch at that point, it's going to say, well, which serial numbers are you shipping? But because I've shipping the whole lot, it already knows. It says, well, you must be shipping 61, 62, and 64. Now that I'm happy with all that, I will give that a save, and let's go and look at the dispatch note. Now, in this situation, it may be that we do have options in 123 for having what we call 2-stage and 3-stage dispatch. So that dispatch can be sort of built up over time throughout the day, or it can be approved by another user as well. I haven't worried. I've kept just what we call simple dispatch on. So I've created my dispatch, and then I can immediately look at that dispatch note and see the information there. So here we can see we've got the customer information, dispatch note number, all of that sort of carrier information that I was talking about before. So number of pallets and packs and dimensions. And then we've got 3 of the PCs with 7 more to follow. Anytime that we'll create a dispatch note in 123, what we also have is the ability to look at and print a certificate of conformity. So looking at the certificate of conformity for this this dispatch, this then gives us a bit more information about the actual units that are being shipped. So here we can see it's at the top very similar information to the dispatch note, but then we can actually see that, well, those PCs, the 3 of them have come out of this particular batch, that being 8016. We can see the 3 particular serial numbers that have been shipped. We can also then see the subpart details as well. So these are the 4 components that went into making the PC1000 and the individual batch numbers there. So if you remember, when we issued these, we specifically issued batch 8015 of the mice, and you can see that information is recorded there. And this, as I say, this certificate of conformity is really then giving you all of that information that you could your customer would need. Again, both the dispatch note and the certificate of conformity, they're all completely amendable by you. And one last thing, just before we end this demo here for today, what we'll do is we'll just have a very quick look, because we can also create packing lists here as well. I won't go into that in detail, so we can packing list. If you have multiple pallets that are shipping out on one dispatch note, you can create a packing list for each. And if we were to use that batch information, we can use the full batch trace inquiry, and this is a really quick way of being able to then see all of the units that have, all of the batches that have gone into making our items. So I'll look at my PC1000, I'll look at my batch number 8016 here, and here we can see that we've got these 4 components that have gone into making my my PC. So the same information that we saw on the certificate of conformity, we can see those component batch numbers have gone in there. We can show all levels as well. So if we did have multiple level bombs, we could go all the way down the structure. But what we can also do is go the other way, and we can actually say, well, if I were to just choose my MS1000, that wireless mice, and say, well, batch 8015, we can see where that went. So when we were looking at the finished goods, we were looking at explode mode, we were looking kind of down the bomb. If we're looking at implode, we're looking up the bomb, and we're saying, well, actually, where was this mice used? This mice, where were these mice used? And we can see that particular batch was used to manufacture this PC of batch 8016. And this is particularly useful if there's any sort of recall on a component. You can then just put that information straight into full batch trace inquiry and then see everywhere that that component has been used, particularly if you had to do a recall at that point. And with that, I think we have we've covered our demo in more detail as I often tend to do. So we will from there we'll take a break. But thank you for your time.